It's WST Sunday Live, hosted by Hrabchak, Lyss Houde, and Jacob Stoller.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome into another edition of WST Sunday Live. My name is Hrabchak. Today, joined by Lyss Houde, Jacob Stoller, Sportsnet.ca, unable to join us this morning, but we've got a very, very packed show. We're obviously going to start with the tragic and unexpected news of Brad Scheifele, Mark Scheifele's father, and last night's game, which was ultimately the dominant storyline. As the Winnipeg Jets season came to an end, 2-1 in overtime, wrapping up the series against the Dallas Stars, who are off to the Western Conference Finals. So we're going to recap the game last night. We're going to recap the series against Dallas, the series against St. Louis, the playoffs, the season as a whole. This isn't a full offseason preview quite yet. We'll save that for maybe another day. But thank you, everyone, for joining us here at 9 a.m. on WST Sunday Live. Lyss, how are you doing this morning?
Doesn't matter how I'm doing. We got lots to talk about. So yeah, no, I'm good. Obviously, I wasn't on the show last week, and I wish we were reuniting under better circumstances. But
yes,
there's a lot to talk about. Lots of feelings, lots of thoughts. We do thank everyone for being here. I was expecting a smaller crowd today, not gonna lie to you guys, considering what we've been able to talk about for the last few weeks and how fun the last month or so has been. But for those of you who are here right now, we do appreciate it so very much.
Absolutely. And yeah, people in chat are already mentioning it. Let's start with Mark Scheifele, who played through tragedy yesterday in today's game. Yesterday's game, excuse me, it's still early. But Brad Scheifele, his father, passed away through the night. Kevin Cheveldayoff spoke to the media, relayed that set of news, and kind of mentioned that the Jets were behind him 100%. Didn't mention anything regarding him playing in the game, nor should he have. And then Scott O'Neill came up later and said Mark Scheifele wants to play. It's what his dad would have wanted. That's what Mark Scheifele said to Scott O'Neill. And what do you know? Mark Scheifele opens the scoring for the Winnipeg Jets and is like easily their best skater in the game. Like, I can't even imagine playing through those circumstances. And for Scheifele to play the way he did, Scott O'Neill said after the game that he's proud of Mark Scheifele. He said his dad would have been proud of Mark Scheifele. And I want to echo those comments because Winnipeg supported Mark Scheifele 100%, whether or not he was going to play. And for him to play and play the way he did, it was just incredible. Hockey can be so poetic and so beautiful at times with him scoring the goal. And it can also be so cruel with him being in the box for the Dallas Stars overtime winner. And Lyss, we'll talk more about after the winner and how the Winnipeg Jets responded to that, specifically Adam Lowry, because I want a moment on that. But just quickly, your thoughts on Mark Scheifele, a very heavy emotional day for him. And he ends up scoring and playing a great game through what is one of the worst days of his life.
It's so hard to do what we're about to do, which is you talk about this and then you move on to different topics of conversation, but it's impossible to isolate what happened last night Friday night / Saturday morning, and then the sequence of everyone finding out the news and how the day went about and everything like that, because it impacted every single person on that team and it impacted every single decision that was made by whether it be the coaching staff, the players on the ice. Like, we've all been to work after receiving bad news or like after a breakup or after losing someone. Like, it's so hard sometimes, especially in the early stages of grief. Everyone goes through things differently, but you're kind of just running on fumes and it's so hard to like center yourself in reality. And we know how focused NHL players want to be when they play. And so it's impossible to remove this storyline from any of the other storylines of the game. But, you, I think, summed it up really eloquently and talked about a lot of the different components that I think a lot of people were just really proud to be Jets fans yesterday, watching how everyone kind of rallied and not just they talked about it, but then, the donations were nice as well. But I think something like that is really nice because the pressure comes off of Mark Scheifele. We're not following him around with a camera and stuff like that and looking for him. Like, Winnipeg Jets fans weren't like trying to dig up personal information. They weren't trying to figure out what happened. They're just like, what can we do? How can we be a support as a fan base for this player that's been here for 15 years and that is a career Winnipeg Jet and is an elite player in the NHL and has only ever said good things about the city of Winnipeg? Like, what can we do right now? And I think Jets fans responded really beautifully. So, I mean, yeah, it's really, really, really hard to watch everything kind of surrounding that. And we're all impacted by all these things. We win as a group and we lose as a group, right? So it was really hard to kind of experience that from the periphery for Mark Scheifele yesterday. But it was really nice to see the team support him in the way that we knew they would.
Yeah, I think that was a big thing for me. You knew that the organization was going to support him. You knew that this fan base was going to support him. I also want to shout out Stars fans who started donating $55 to the True North Youth Foundation. Very classy move from the opposing team's fan base. And that's the hockey community at its best when we're all coming together and helping out someone, helping out Mark Scheifele, who's in a tough situation, having an awful day. And people are doing what they can to make his day maybe a little bit better. So very, very touching day yesterday. I did say on the post-game show last night, Lyss, with Remus, thank you everyone who checked it out. I thought it was very poetic that Neil Pionk was the first person that hugged Mark Scheifele after that goal, because after the game, you heard Neil Pionk be asked about Adam Johnson and playing through that tragedy. And Neil Pionk, I'll say it, shades of Mark Scheifele, shades of Neil Pionk, they each scored in their first game back. I remember his road game against St. Louis. Neil Pionk had the biggest grin on his face. Mark Scheifele scored last night, biggest grin on his face. Neil Pionk, first person to greet him. I don't know. I thought that was very, very poetic that Neil Pionk, who probably knows more than anyone on that team what Mark Scheifele is going through to play through a tragedy and score a goal and the emotions that come with that, was the first person there for him after he scored that goal. I thought that was pretty awesome. A pretty awesome moment there. Anything else you want to say before we get to kind of the way the Jets reacted after the OT winner supporting Mark Scheifele?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we spoke about the support that we did hear and did see, right, which is public media availability from Scott Arniel and stuff like that, public media availability from Kevin Cheveldayoff. We have no idea what happened behind the scenes, but you always find out about these little things every now and then, nuggets after the fact and whatnot, and you just know that everyone in that group was doing everything that they could, because obviously the stakes of the time of the year change things for the scope of how it impacts the team as well. But also, like you mentioned, Neil Pionk, it's a very, very specific one-to-one comparison. But Josh Morrissey, that was the guy that everyone, when Mark Scheifele walked in the building, people were saying, oh, like Mark Scheifele walking in, there's Josh Morrissey beside him. And it's like, that's also a player who's gone through a similar tragedy in his life with his father passing away. I believe it was in 2021. And I believe Kyle Connor's father also passed away in that same year. So. And it's one thing that I think is super important to remember and acknowledge too, is that like these are young dads, right? Like these guys are 30. Like you think about like how many people, like when someone dies before the age of like 85, oftentimes like it's very, very, it can be very staggering and very hard to stomach, even someone after the fact, right? Like everyone deals with things differently, and every person who we lose is lost in a different way and is felt in a different way, and they're always sad. So it's really difficult to know that so many other players in this team have also experienced that similar tragedy. And it is nice to have a support system like that. And you wish, again, same thing, you wish under better circumstances, the players in the team could support him. But life is what it is. And, you can choose certain moments to rally and come together. And I think that goal is a pretty symbolic gesture of what, what can happen when people have the right support networks in place.
Yeah. And I also think the team rallying and coming together was on full display after Dallas scored the overtime winner. Thomas Harley, wide open in the slot, kind of the goal we can get into in a second. But what I want to focus on here was there was a video that was posted. Someone in the press box was filming the power play because obviously you could kind of sense that's a really good chance for Dallas to score. And they score the goal, and they're kind of doing a wide shot of the entire rink. And you just see the Dallas bench pour over. They're all celebrating. The Winnipeg Jets bench, one player hops over the boards and goes straight to the penalty box. That's Captain Adam Lowry, who goes straight to the penalty box, into the penalty box, picks up his teammate Mark Scheifele, gets him out of the penalty box, lets him know, hey, we're here for you. It's okay. Then the rest of the team comes over. Everyone is embracing Mark Scheifele, huddled around him, giving him hugs. Then in the handshake line, that was one of the most emotional handshake lines I've ever seen, because every single player, you could tell for Dallas, was saying, hey, man, sorry for your loss. You're a warrior for playing through this, giving him a massive hug, massive embrace. And it was clearly heavily weighing on Mark Scheifele that he was in the box for that goal. And I love everything about Adam Lowry going straight over to the box and being there for his teammate in one of the worst moments of his career, of his life. And this Jets team has been a family, and we've talked about that. This group, this culture. Adam Lowry's been the leader of the culture change here in Winnipeg, and that's why he's the captain. It's because he's the kind of guy that goes over and picks up his teammate when they're in the box with their season ending. I just really like that, and the support from the Jets roster for Scheifele after the loss list.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it is so, again, I'll use the word symbolic again of just what this team represents, right? Because Adam Lowry leads the charge doing exactly that. And then the handshake line happens, and Mark Scheifele is at like the back of the handshake line because everyone on his own team is trying to talk to him first, and they go through. Nobody gets off that ice. That was the one part that was really emotional to me to watch, because you think about when you lose a playoff series, a lot of times the guys are like, hey, get me out of here, especially when you lose a playoff series on the road, because everyone in the arena, like, can you imagine, like, the St. Louis Blues, bro, after that Game 7 loss, like, I was right by the tunnel where they were going down. I would not have wanted to spend a second more on that ice if I didn't have to. Every single player waited for Mark to finish the handshake line to let him go in first. They stood on that ice listening to the loud music and the loud fans, all of that green, knowing that their season is over. And, you know, some people in the chat are mentioning that, like, you know, there's a lot not to like about this season, that, you know, there's a lot to dissect in terms of like the underwhelmingness / what should have gone better. I'm totally here for that. I get that. And these players understand that the goal was not to lose to Dallas in 6 in the second round. That was never the goal. And they sat and they absorbed that because that was what they knew that their teammate needed from them. And that's what they wanted to show their support for their teammate. And I commend them for that, because man, oh man, is it not fun to sit and, you know, have to soak that all in. And then they did it for Mark, and they do it for anyone else on that team too. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think that we kind of said it all as to Mark Scheifele and his family. Obviously, our condolences here at Winnipeg Sports Talk, me, Lyss, Jacob, Huss, and Remo, our condolences to Mark and his family. And someone said, hey, silver lining with the loss, Mark gets to spend more time with his family. Daryl said that. So if you want to take a silver lining, if you're a glass half full kind of person, there you go. But let's get into the game list. 2-1 overtime loss to end the Jets season. Thomas Harley with the overtime winner on the power play. What were your thoughts of this game? And then we can get into the series as a whole. I think the biggest thing for me in this one was Connor Hellebuyck looking like himself on the road. And I think that's something that we didn't see all throughout the playoffs, was Connor Hellebuyck look like himself in a road game. But man, the Jets had some sketchy moments in this game, and Connor Hellebuyck absolutely kept them in it. And then on the OT winner, Dylan Sandberg kind of gets caught between the play behind the net and the play in the slot, ends up screening Connor Hellebuyck perfectly, almost like crosses his eyes right when the one-timer's coming. Just an unfortunate overtime winner in a lot of ways. But your thoughts on Game 6, Lyss, and the Winnipeg Jets' effort despite coming up a goal short in overtime?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that was a 1-1 hockey game that went into overtime was a little bit astounding to me, I'm not going to lie, because I thought this was Dallas Stars hockey. Listen, like, the Winnipeg Jets looked chaotic in their own zone, which is not something I've said a lot over the course of the last 7-8 months. And I think there was a lot of movement up and down the ice in terms of, I can't even say rush chances, because the Winnipeg Jets are notorious for choosing to dump a puck a little bit further or rim it around the boards, as opposed to taking some low danger shot off the rush. But there was a lot of Like that was a fast game. There was a lot going on.
Yeah.
The Winnipeg Jets did not look super tight knit at 5-on-5 in their own zone. I will say that with a lot of confidence. I do mean that. And I know losing Josh Morrissey partway through that game definitely impacts that. But even before that, there was a lot not to like about how the Winnipeg Jets looked in their own zone. And then a lot of the game was played at 5-on-5. We know that, which I think was definitely by design. And I think that, listen, like all the things that everyone liked about the Dallas Stars going into the season, you know, the finish power that they have, Miro Heiskanen looking a little bit more like himself. Like this is a good hockey team. And it's the sort of thing where you have a team that is playing through a lot of stuff. You have some players who look a little bit banged up, whatever. Like I think the better team just won this hockey game and it happens. And, you know, I think maybe there's more reflection you can do about why is this team better than your hockey team? What could you have done differently and whatnot? But at the end of the day, like I think it was a fun game to watch. I really liked it. Mark Scheifele getting to score that goal, knowing that, you know, he's not going to get a chance to score another goal for a couple months now. It was really nice to see him get that one. But yeah, it was definitely a fun hockey game, and it felt a little bit more like Dallas Stars hockey for sure.
Yeah, I agree. The way I look at last night's game after sleeping on it, obviously we did the initial reaction on our YouTube channel right after the game. After sleeping on it, I think the Winnipeg Jets lost this series in game 1, not game 6. Like I know the series ended last night, but I think the home 3-2 loss to open up the series where Jake Ottinger had like 31 saves and the Jets lost by a goal and their power play kind of sold them in that game. I think that was more of a winnable game than last night going on the road with all the circumstances surrounding this team. Game 4 as well, I'll throw in there. The Jets lost that game 3-1. Granlund had the hat trick, but I thought the Jets were the better team in that game. They just didn't bury their chances in games 1 and 4. I see game 1, 4, and 6 all as coin flip games that the Stars came out on top of. The Jets wins in this series I don't really see as coin flip games. So I don't know. This team at least got better on the road. If we're taking a lot of glass half full approaches this morning. But yeah, this is John's here says to win the cup, you need to win on the road, which the Jets have not done for the past 3 seasons. That is a big concern. And a big reason for that was Connor Hellebuyck's struggles on the road. Something that he was a lot better in game 6, I thought, than he was in the St. Louis series where he got pulled every single game on the road, whether it was the team or whatever. I thought last night's game all played at 5-on-5 without Josh Morrissey, which we'll get into that in a second here. I don't know. I thought that was not one of the better Jets performances of the series. And there were games like game 1 and game 4 where they were those were winnable games. Those were not Dallas Stars A+ games. I think last night was a Dallas Stars A+ game where Jake Ottinger was great and they were clicking. Game 1 and game 4, you can't say the same. The Dallas Stars weren't really clicking. One player was in each of those games because they had a Rantanen hat trick and a Granlund hat trick. But I don't know. I see this series being lost in game 1 and game 4 Lyss. I don't know what your thoughts are on the series as a whole.
No, 100%. But I think that's, you know, it comes down to, we talk about momentum game over game with teams and whatnot. Like that's what Dallas was able to do in this series kind of shows what you have to do, which is, you know, you lose a stinker and you come out and you win the next one. Even if you don't dominate the next one, you win the next one. You score, you know, you take those just above the pad shots on Connor Hellebuyck's glove side off the rush because you need pucks on net and you know that this might be a chance to score. Like they, I think, you know, really showed winning those tight knit games is more important. Like the way the Winnipeg Jets did against the St. Louis Blues, right, in those games 1 and 2, where those were pretty tightly matched games, and coming out on top of those ones is huge. If you're gonna lose, okay, go ahead, get blowout, doesn't matter, who cares? There's no cumulative save percentage in the playoffs or whatever we want to, like no one cares, none of that matters. So I think Dallas did a really good job of not letting back-to-back home shutouts for the reigning Vezina champion who might win again. And you know, if he gets hot, oh boy, you're in trouble. That's fine. They calm, cool, and collected and came out and won the next one. And I think that was really, really impressive from the group. I heard a really interesting stat on Sportsnet yesterday. I don't remember what it was about, like how the losing back-to-back games, like losing consecutive playoff games, like they haven't done that in quite some time.
Yes.
And
they're
I feel
5-0 now.
Right.
coming out of a loss.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, so I think something like that, like that's pretty indicative of what this group is able to do. And like, look, I like the Dallas Stars. I think they're a fun hockey team to watch. I've been a massive enjoyer of watching them play comparatively to some other teams in the league this year. Like there's a lot to really like about that group. And all this, we talk about the Winnipeg Jets probably being a bit banged up, and we can talk a little bit more about that if we need to. But like Dallas has been doing this with Jamie Benn playing non-existent hockey, Miro Heiskanen not even playing for the first round, and going 11-7 because they know that he's not 100% yet, and Jason Robertson nowhere to be found either. Like, this is a team that's firing on some cylinders and playing as well as they are, which I think is really impressive.
Miro Heiskanen last night was the best. He was Miro Heiskanen. Like, he wasn't. He looked really good. He looked really good. He was
every
really
time he got the puck, he started skating it with it. I was like, oh god damn it.
He looked like he was moving at like 1.5 x speed, and everyone else was in slow motion when he's moving with the puck. And that's what Miro Heiskanen does. He's a very good skater, one of the best in the league. That's why he's one of the best defensemen in the league. And he's only going to get better, which, again, I said this last night. I know this all stings. Dallas versus Edmonton is going to be a pretty fun Western Conference Finals because Edmonton looks like they're on a mission, and Dallas is only getting better with Miro Heiskanen. But let's talk about Josh Morrissey, and then we will go on to the playoffs as a whole, Lyss, and this team with the St. Louis series, the Dallas series, maybe even a conversation about the season as a whole. Josh Morrissey, though, leaves this game late in the second period, gets tangled up in the corner with Mikko Rantanen, immediately grabs at his left knee, doesn't put any weight on it as he goes to the bench, is clearly in some pain as he's kind of like screaming, and then goes down the tunnel, needs to be helped down the tunnel. Scott O'Neill said after the game that Morrissey's injury doesn't look good, or it's not good, was the quote. It's May 18th, 4 months to the day of September 18th, which is like ballpark when training camp would start. Like maybe it's a little bit later in September, like the mid-20s of September is when training camp usually starts. You're hoping, obviously, the Sportsnet panel kind of speculated that, if it's a grade 1 MCL sprain, I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to get into all that. But I will say knee injuries can be bad. They can be severe. And 4 months is a long time to recover, but it's also not when you look at knee injuries. So let's hope that Kevin BX is right, and it's like a grade 2 MCL sprain, and he's back in 4 to 6 weeks and can rehab in this offseason, because you don't want this bleeding into next season, Lyss, even if it means him missing a little bit of training camp.
Well, I mean, I think we already saw this playoff run, what it looks like to have your 1A defenseman not at 100% capacity. Because if you want to talk about guys who didn't really perform in the way that I think the Jets maybe would have wanted them to, I do have to put Josh Morrissey into that camp. And blame whatever you want. Like, doesn't matter. Like, I do think that he wasn't playing at 100% even before he goes off in agony, and that he knows that there's something severely wrong in that play. I've never seen Josh get mad like that. Like that's definitely a player who is frustrated because he knows that something not good has just happened. And same as you, I don't know where Monty got his medical degree, but I'm not going to get mine from there either. So I'll sit this one out.
Nice,
but yeah,
nice.
It's thank you very much.
Nice.
But like, I think that this is a guy that if we want to talk about going into next season, what the Jets need to do next season, all those sorts of things, Josh Morrissey needs to be Josh Morrissey in game 83. And I just don't know if we saw that this year. And so starting off the season, not playing or not healthy would not be a good start to getting to that point. But obviously it goes without saying that you hope that it's the least severe that it can be, and that the off season is as restful and rehabilitatory. That's not a word.
Sure.
Rehabilitating as it possibly can be, because I think he and many of the other guys on the team probably need it, and that's something that I think is worth mentioning, that this team looked a little bit worn. Definitely, we talk about maybe Connor Hellebuyck. Listen, like, this is a guy that I think has been trying to prove himself in the playoff for the last couple of years. He's proved himself enough to me that now I'm like, okay, I know that you're able to do. Please play 55 games next year.
Yeah. Please play less. Love Connor Hellebuyck. Love when he starts. Like to see it a little bit less actually next year. I might agree with you on that. That's something that we'll talk about later on in the episode for sure. As for Josh Morrissey, that was a brutal loss. I mean, the Jets did okay, or they actually did a phenomenal job in Game 7 when Josh Morrissey went out. Neil Pionk played like 46 minutes in that game. I thought that this defense core did as well as they could in this game, playing massive minutes in one of Dallas's A games. Like I said, Dallas was really rolling in this game. And yeah, obviously you want Josh Morrissey to be back for training camp. You want this to be like not severe whatsoever. And we will probably get that information. I saw someone ask if Scott O'Neill is speaking today. I believe their season-ending locker cleanout, big media avail where we hear from every player, and Scott O'Neill is going to be Monday or Tuesday. So we'll hear from them then. That's when we find out the details on injuries and things of that nature. And Scott O'Neill will probably say what Josh Morrissey's injury is. And that will be big offseason news, as well as many other things that we'll get into later on in this episode. But Lyss, I want to talk about the playoffs as a whole. And maybe this will be a good transition into our trending up down segment, because I want to use trending up down as an entire playoffs, not just game 6, not just game 5 that we didn't cover here, but the entire playoffs. I want to do trending up down. So we'll get into that in a second here, but your thoughts on the St. Louis series, the Jets' ability to fight through that, come up big in a big moment in game 7 with 1.6 seconds left to tie it and then win it. The Dallas series, where lose a few coin flip games. Your season ends in 6. Obviously not the results everyone wanted, but where do you sit with this year's playoff run, the 2024-25 playoff run?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are a few things that I try to be as level as I can with certain things. And I understand the value of moral victories. I understand they're never enough, when the Stanley Cup is on the line and different things like that.
Yeah.
Getting through the first round was incredibly important for this group. I'm not going to lie to you. To me, there was very little difference between losing in the second round and losing in the third. It was, winning the Stanley Cup is always kind of the goal here, but I'm no more disappointed in this group right now than I would be if they had pushed this to 7-1 and then, got bounced in 5 by the Oilers or whatever like that. Like, right. Getting through that first round was incredibly important, in my opinion. The inability to win on the road, still massive, still unbelievably massive. I there's a lot we can say about why that could be, and we can try and dissect that. We could try and talk about that, but that's a huge storyline for me. But listen, you look at the President's Trophy winners from the last couple of seasons, the last 10 seasons, whatever. Everyone's freaking out about this curse. Curses aren't real. Don't even get me started. Florida Panthers won a President's Trophy, won a Stanley Cup a little bit later. Colorado Avalanche, I believe, won a President's Trophy, won a Stanley Cup a bit later. Vegas as well, different teams like that. Like, listen, there's still a window with this group. I was of the mind that, there's a lot that needs to get done, get proven this year because of the Nikolai Ehlers question, because of what is the peak of Connor Hellebuyck and Mark Scheifele's career questions, like all these different things for sure. Don't get me wrong, but like, it's not over, if that makes sense. Like, I do think that, if you want to be disappointed with how the season ended, you are allowed to be disappointed. If you are feeling better that they were finally able to shake that first round curse and not get bounced in 5 by another team, and that Connor Hellebuyck started looking better and stuff like that, like, you're allowed to be excited about that. Like, again, I will always say that you're allowed to feel however you want, because this is very much a field and an industry that is driven by feelings when it comes to fans. So whatever your emotions are, have at them. Don't get me wrong. But I think kind of my overarching whatever is that I think this group did a lot of really good things. And I tried not to look at the trade deadline too much when looking at the game over game situations, because we will talk about that extensively over the course of, I'm sure, the offseason, just because of how glaring that whole storyline is. But at the end of the day, can you say that every single player on this team went out there and performed at their absolute best? No, you can't really say that. So that's, I do think that you have the right to be kind of underwhelmed by some of the secondary scoring, some of the dog in some of the players, some of those really big moments, the special teams, things like that we knew needed to come through and didn't come through. So that's a very, very non-answer. I'm very wishy-washy on it, but I do think getting through that first round was huge. So if you want to look for like a silver lining, glass half full, whatever you want to talk about, that was big, I think, for this group, especially because it wasn't like, when you win the President's Trophy, part of your reward for that is getting supposedly the weakest team in your conference. But the Winnipeg Jets got a pretty hefty opponent in that first round, and it wasn't like they steamrolled them. Like, they had to fight for every single win in that series. So I give them some love for that.
Yeah. And yeah, if you want to Ricky Bobby, if you ain't first or last, be my guest. Like, that is totally a
100%.
fair. You don't win the Stanley Cup. What's the point? I will say this season, the President's Trophy, their first ever Central Division title, like, these are things that when they happen the first time, you should be celebrating, or at least I am. I'm celebrating it because I don't know, when you're Vegas and you win the Pacific every single year, and then you get bounced by Edmonton in 5 in the second round, yeah, that can be viewed as a failure. Vegas didn't really push back. They got absolutely ran out of the building by Edmonton. Their one game they won with like 0.4 seconds left. That was the one game they won in the entire series. I don't know. They win the division every year. So they're not sitting there going, oh, well, they won the division this year. That was a great accomplishment. But like, for the Jets to win it for the first time, I think that is something that's worth celebrating. A banner will be going up in Canada Life Center. The President's Trophy banner will be going up in Canada Life Center. And I can also see the other side that you brought up, Lyss, that the trade deadline, looking back on it, I remember sitting on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Huss and Remo thinking, how do they still have their first round pick? And I don't know if they'll end up trading it, but I really can't believe still that we got through the trade deadline with all the stars aligning, $6 million in cap, picks to make moves work. And they traded for, a fourth liner and a third pair D. I don't know. I agree with you. I didn't look at the trade deadline game to game and like bring up the $6 million in the middle of a playoff series. But now, I don't know. It's tough not to look back and be a little bit disappointed at what happened in the trade deadline. But yeah, I think if you want to celebrate this President's Trophy, winning the division, this team not backing down in playoff games, I think is where a lot of the pride comes from the chat. People are saying things like, I'm very proud to be a Jets fan. And I'm happy about this team. I think that's where that comes from. You finally saw pushback. You saw them not quit until there was 1.6 seconds left in game 7. They pushed right to the very end. Even in the Dallas series, in a game where Dallas had their A game, they took them right to overtime. Like, this team didn't roll over like 2019 in game 6 against the Blues. They didn't roll over like the Vegas series. They didn't roll over like the Colorado series. And I think that's a win. I think that can be celebrated. And I also think that winning the President's Trophy, like you said, means you're a really good hockey team. A lot of this core will be back. Obviously, we'll talk about Nikolai Ehlers later on. But teams do win the President's Trophy, not win the Cup, and then win the very next year or the year after that. It means you're in the class of the NHL that is a Cup contender. The Jets were a Cup contender this year. And I think people are proud of this team because of the fight that they showed. But again, if you want to be disappointed and say, if you ain't first or last, I'm fine with that too. I think you can take whatever angle you want to take with this season because it was such an incredible regular season. You did come up short with some incredible moments in the playoffs. And that's really hard to quantify whether or not it's a success or a failure. I was asked that question a little bit ago. If the Jets lose in the second round, is this season a failure? I don't know. I can't answer that question because it's both. I think it's a little bit of both, Lyss.
Yeah, no, I think you and I are good for one another in the sense of we have a lot of the same opinions, but every now and then we're not great for content because you're like, I don't know, I think it's both. I agree. I also think it's both. I totally understand that. I'm on the same page, and I think that I want to bring back a conversation that we've had earlier this year, and I want to say I brought it up on the show recently again because I want to circle back to it. It was a conversation we had with Jacob a few months ago where we're talking about what I consider to be the recipe for success for a playoff team, which is like, I think you need to have players who are good. Like, you just need to have a baseline of good enough hockey players. You need to be able to make changes and adapt, and you need to have kind of like mental toughness, like be able to play in the big moments. Like, those are my kind of 3 things for success. And I had said the Winnipeg Jets, I do think they have a lot of the personnel that's good enough. But I haven't seen enough from the adaptability. And Jacob's point was that he also thinks that you need to have a little bit of heartbreak. He wanted to add a 4th category to my criteria because he thinks that, in order to go all the way to win that Stanley Cup, like, you need to have suffered through and gone through a little bit of that heartbreak. And I think,
and just to add to that, sorry, heartbreak, not in the first round. Like these teams that are contending, these teams that are contending and go through the heartbreak are losing like deeper in the playoffs than a 5-game out against the Colorado Avalanche. Like this is losing to Dallas on the verge of the Western Conference Finals. This, I think, classifies as that.
Yeah, heartbreak is winning, 6 to 11 games, 6 to 13, 6 to 14, 15 games, whatever. Like, more than just whatever that was that they had done the last couple of years. Like, and like I think the Edmonton Oilers are a fabulous example of that, right? Where it's like they have gotten to the point where like success means something a little bit different for the Edmonton Oilers than it does for like the Toronto Maple Leafs and stuff like that, where it's like the Edmonton Oilers knew that they could get away with, finishing second in the division and or third in the division or whatever it was, because they knew that they were right there, right, last year, and they could win on the road, they could do these things, whatever. And I think the Winnipeg Jets, you want to talk about heartbreak, I think this year had a good balance of both, in the sense of like if they had lost that game 7 against St. Louis, first loss at home, game 7, wild card team, whatever, like that's heartbreak, don't get me wrong, but in a different way. And so I think that they're starting to check off that box. I am still underwhelmed with, I thought that this playoff I was going to be able to check off the box of making changes and making it like adapting to different situations, whatever. We did see the line blender come out a couple times with the team, and I don't know how I feel about it. And I think part of that comes down to, I'm not sure how much trust I have in some of the middle pieces of this lineup. Sure. I'm not 100% certain. But if you want to talk about steps in the right direction, like I think everyone can agree that this season was a massive step in the right direction. But the question is just, is a step enough at this point in time? Because if, you're making a step that gets you 10% of the way closer, you're only going to get somewhere in 10 years, and this group doesn't have 10 years, right? So is a step enough at this stage with this group? And my answer to that is I don't know, but a step is a step, and it's over now, so we'll have to see kind of what the next season looks like.
And I think that's a good transition. We'll kind of close out this playoff discussion, season discussion, success, failure, and the clicky headline nature of it with our clicky headline nature segment list, and that is trending up, trending down. Thank you everyone for joining us here on a Sunday, 9 a.m. As we break down the Winnipeg Jets season that came to a close last night. And while you're here with us, make sure you hit the like button down below and hit the comment section. Drop your picks down below for trending up or trending down. You know the rules by this point. We're going to pick one player who has trended up or down. Usually it's over the past week of play, but this time, Lyss, we're going to do the entire playoffs. Whose reputation trended up or down for you in the playoffs? Do you want to go first for this one, trending up?
Sure. I'm going to pick for trending up. I'm going to pick my assigned boy. He's not really my boy, but everyone thinks he is. My boy, Neil Pionk. Neil Pionk's going to get my trending up for the playoffs. Nice. I think that nice this is a guy that I got a lot of flack for telling people. I said that I think the Winnipeg Jets are a worse hockey team without Neil Pionk, which everyone somehow thought was me saying that they should sign him to a 10x10, which is not what I was saying. But I think that Neil Pionk is social media player, and I think that in this playoff series he was one of the better hockey players in this this stretch of I guess how many 13 games I guess it was. I thought that he had some dog and big moments where he needed to. Obviously that shot to win for the Adam Lard tipping game 7 and stuff like that's huge. But like a couple of really massive moments. There was that one play yesterday where he just totally dogged Rupe Hintz one-on-one coming in off the rush and stuff like that. We know that Neil Pionk is a really good one-on-one defender. And I thought that, for a guy who's gotten a lot of flack from this fan base for being straight up not good, I thought he was good. And I think that, that's what you want to see from a guy who just signed a big contract. That is a lot of money. That is a lot of term to give to a guy that I'm not sure how I feel about that contract, but I don't think you could feel any better about it after watching those 13 games. I don't think he could have done much more. I thought he was fantastic. Is he worth the contract he got? I'm not going to answer that for you right now. I think we're going to have to see on that one, but I think my grin here is probably telling you that I'm leaning a little bit towards the no on that. But listen, I thought in those 13 games, he was probably one of the Jets' best defensemen, if not best players. So Neil Pionk gets my trending up.
I agree 100%. Neil Pionk, what a playoff run, stepped up in big moments, like when Josh Morrissey went down in game 7 and he played 46 minutes and had the game of his life. I much respect to Neil Pionk and how he played in this postseason, because unbelievable job. And controversial take, I'll say it, when the Winnipeg Jets signed Dylan Samberg to a long-term extension, I am A-okay with that being their shutdown pair for the next 5 years. I am all good with it.
Interesting. Okay.
All good.
Okay.
They posted elite second pairing metrics. Neil Pionk proved in this playoffs, at least to me, that he's a big game player. I'm cool with it. When Neil Pionk is 34, 35, and the contract is aging out a little bit, sure. Connor Hellebuyck will be 37 at that time and 38. Like, I don't think any of that will really matter at that point. The Jets will be out of this core's window by that point. For the next 4 seasons, I'm all in on a Samberg Pionk. No surprise.
Yeah. And I think the Jets aren't really used to giving Josh Morrissey modified minutes, and I think that would be really cool to be able to do that and then let him do his little fancy spin moves against the Colin Blackwells of the world, as opposed to the Miro Heiskanens and the Mikko Rantanens. I think that'd be pretty sweet.
Yep, absolutely. My pick for trending up is going to be Nikolai Ehlers, a player who came into this playoffs having scored 4 goals in 37 games, and then played 2 against St. Louis and played the series against Dallas, scored 5 goals in the series against Dallas, 2 of them being empty netters, one of them being banked off of Esa Lindell, and another one being, just a surprise shot from the boards. But even outside of the goals, I thought Nikolai Ehlers was one of the Jets' best forwards in this second round against Dallas. Doing it from that second line that didn't play as much at 5-on-5. He did get the first power play. But I will say, like we say all the time, that points are often a direct correlation of usage, like how much you play and in what situations you play largely dictate how many points you will get. And I think Nikolai Ehlers earned kind of his luck and earned his points in this series, because I thought he was creating a ton of offense on the power play. I thought he was their most effective power play player. Which isn't saying much, because that was an area where the Winnipeg Jets really struggled in this series, was with the man advantage. But Nikolai Ehlers was really, really, really dominant in his minutes, I thought, and generated a lot of offense and was maybe the Jets' best offensive player in this series. So I'm going to take Nikolai Ehlers, trending up, whose reputation could only trend up, at least when it comes to the playoffs. And that is where I'm going to sit on that. Trending down, Lyss, whose reputation in this year's playoffs trended down?
I'm seeing a lot of people say Gabe Vilardi, and listen, I have time for that for sure. I'm going to try and lean away from any of the guys who had some very outwardly injury problems over the course of this series, including Mark Scheifele, Josh Morrissey, and Gabe Vilardi, just because Gabe Vilardi was a tough watch in this series. I'm not going to lie to you. There were definitely some moments where I was like, oh my gosh, what are we doing here? But this is a guy that I think if that injury happens in December, takes a little bit longer to get back. I do think that that's just the nature of this time of the year. So I think that's a guy that everyone knows I'm a massive fan of. So I'm not going to I wanted to go there, but I feel like I'm not going to go there.
Sure.
Weird pick. I'm going to go with Morgan Barron.
Okay.
Morgan Barron's going to get my trending down, just because I think that this is a guy who, and maybe this is my fault and not his, I had big expectations for going into the playoffs, just because that move to the center position for him, I thought was looking really, really good at the end of the season. And I thought there was some huge potential for the Winnipeg Jets to kind of go punch for punch with the bottom sixes of other teams and come out on top, whether it be in actual scoring or even just wearing the other team down. And I just thought the energy wasn't exactly where I wanted it to be from that line. The goal scoring definitely wasn't where we wanted it to be from that line and stuff like that. And so when it's a line, I often look to the center to see what could have gone differently. And I think Morgan Barron is just a guy that has so much potential to be such a high impact bottom six center. And I just didn't see it from him. Everyone is saying, oh, he's due and whatnot. And I was really high on this player going into these playoffs, but over these 13 games, just really wish I would have seen a little bit more from him.
Sure. I'm with you on that. I see some picks in the chat, and there's a few ways I could go with this. I'm going to say, so many people are dissing him over these past 12 hours, but I'm still going to say Mason Appleton.
Yeah, fair enough.
Just because that third line, it was really weird. At home, they were great, where they could control the matchup. And guess what? That matchup was against Hintz and Rantanen, but on the road, they struggled like mightily to defend. And I don't know how the matchup gets tougher than Rantanen, where like at home, I thought they did a good job defending them. So I don't know. Mason Appleton is playing a ton of 5-on-5 minutes, more than anyone on the Winnipeg Jets second line, Perfetti and Meskov Ehlers. That third line is really Winnipeg's second line with Lowry, Niederreiter, and Appleton. And I'm not even going to talk about the missed opportunity in the third, which obviously we all know was just that, a missed opportunity with kind of the net wide open and shooting it a little bit back into Jake Ottinger. I think for the minutes he played, there wasn't enough production. The defense wasn't really as strong as you'd like it to see, especially on the road, like I said. So I'm going to say Mason Appleton. I could also say like the trade deadline. And I saw the power play, all those things that aren't players specifically, but I'm going to say Mason Appleton had the very tough miss late in the third there. And I will say that. I also will say Jake Ottinger saved Kyle Connor from being trending up for me, because man, did Jake Ottinger have Kyle Connor's number in this series. Like Kyle Connor had so many chances that Ottinger, just got a pad on or got a glove on or got a blocker on. And I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to see if that bit remains a storyline. If these teams meet in the playoffs once again, can Kyle Connor beat Jake Ottinger on some of his chances? Because games really could have turned if Kyle Connor scored on a few of those. So I'm going to say Mason Appleton trending down. There are a few other players, but anything else, Lyss, on this segment before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone in the chat is having some great picks for this. I gotta say, guys, we're close to like 200 people, which is super impressive considering, I don't know. I think we're doing a pretty good job of trying not to be too like down in the dumps or too, guys, this is awesome. Everything is great. I think we're kind of towing that line, and it seems like everybody else here is doing that as well. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here and participating. I think, maybe I'll give a couple of quick honorable mentions to, if not the trending down, people talking about a couple more of those depth guys, Niederreiter, Brad, and Tanev, totally on board with a couple of those picks. Sure. Like, look, I think I liked what I saw from, some of the big forwards, as in, you mentioned Nikolai Ehlers, Kyle Connor, I think deserves a bit of love too. Someone mentioned 17 points. Is that true? Did he actually have 17 points? Because
Kyle Connor?
That sounds about right. But like, that's pretty impressive in the grand scheme of things. And I think Dylan Samberg deserves some love. I think Hayden Fleury deserves some love. I think, he wasn't perfect by any means, but, for a guy that in September, I think everybody was pretty much assuming was going to play a full season with the Manitoba Moose, coming in and not getting sunk every shift that he's out there, I thought he was good. And, game 7, as much as, it's really hard. It does give the vibe of that meme of the guy, spraying champagne all over himself, and he's at the very bottom of the podium to be celebrating that win too much. But like, look, those are the games that you dream about as a hockey fan, and those are the moments that you will remember forever. So I do give love to anyone who had a big game in that game, and Hayden Fleury, I think, deserves some flowers for that, and he definitely got them. I think a lot of people were excited about that. So yeah, I think this group as a whole, I mentioned this at the top of the show, and will continue to say it, that there are definitely a lot of players that I think could have stepped up a little bit more, had a bit more dog. I definitely do believe that. But the one thing I will say is that it's kind of fascinating. Maybe this is derailing the conversation too much, but I'm going to do it because I always do.
What else are we going to talk about, Lyss?
Well, exactly.
Like, come on. It's the off season.
No,
bring
for
up
sure.
Whatever you want.
But we talk about the regular season, the President's Trophy, whatever. The Winnipeg Jets, this is going to be a really, really weird thing. I'll get to my point eventually. Don't worry. It's fine. But the Winnipeg Jets had a very, very healthy season. They did not lose a lot of players to injury over the course. They didn't have long-term injuries, whatever. I think there's a little bit of giving, like the Edmonton Oilers this year. I think that this is a comparison I want to give, is that, Connor McDavid missed some time. Leon Draisaitl missed some time, whatever. These are guys who played really long seasons last year, punching not above their weight class, because they exist in a weight class of their own, but we're playing like elite hockey for what would it have been, like 100 and some games, right? Like more than most teams end up having to play. And at the beginning of the season, we're like, whoa, like Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl look tired. Leon Draisaitl got the Four Nations face-off break-off. Both those players missed some time with injury. Obviously, you don't want to miss time with injury, but every player on the Winnipeg Jets played a lot of hockey this year. Some of the guys who were the best in the playoffs. Crazy thing to say, or some of the guys who got some time off this year. I know it's not time off. You're not going to Boca and like sitting and drinking a margarita or whatever. Like you're rehabbing a very difficult injury. But I think a lot of these players are tired. I think a lot of these players are worn through. Like, guys who play tough matchups every single night. We're going out there trying to win hockey games, battle every game out like it's, game 83 every single night. I think this group was pretty weathered. So I think it'll be really interesting to see what that looks like over the course of the next year. Is this a team that can fall into the Florida Panthers category yet of like, not just get in? I'm not going to go all the way to just get in.
Right. No,
but like,
no,
where you don't need to win the President's Trophy, whatever, you need to, have guys ready to play their best hockey in April. I think a lot of the players on the team didn't play their best hockey in April. They played it over the course of the year, and it's nice to know that they're able to do that. But I don't know. Do you know where I'm trying to go with this?
Yes, I do. Because Florida and Edmonton are three seeds in their divisions, and like on a crash course to meet in the Stanley Cup final once again. So there are teams that can do that. I agree with you though. The Jets are not in that category yet. And the one thing that concerns me is look at the cap sheet for the Colorado Avalanche and the Dallas Stars. These star players are not going anywhere. So neither is Connor Hellebuyck, right? Like the Jets will have Connor Hellebuyck for the next 7 years, but they're going to have to go through those teams if they want to have any substantial run. And that's going to be very, very tough. So it's absolutely something where over the course of these regular seasons, over these next couple of years, it's obviously going to be about making the playoffs. You still have to make the playoffs. But with Connor Hellebuyck, with Mark Scheifele still in his prime at 32 years old, with Morrissey in his prime and Sandberg playing the way he is, and Perfetti elevating his game, and Velarde and Kyle Connor being in his prime, the playoffs should be a given with this group. So I'm not going to say like, oh, just get in, because that should be the expectation year over year. If you have Connor Hellebuyck in net, you should make the playoffs like easily. When they made the playoffs the year he won his first Vezina, that was the biggest shock, because he just carried the team and the most brutal blue line to the playoffs. I will say it's all about the playoffs, and it's all about beating. That's how every group is defined every single year, but they're not quite, like I mentioned earlier, Vegas wins the Pacific every single year, and no one there is talking about how, oh, this was such a great year, even though we got bounced in 5 by the Oilers. Like I think the Jets are slowly going to get to that point, but they're not at that point yet. Where like if they won the Central next year, that would be another big accomplishment. We're not at the point where like division titles are like, whatever.
No, for sure. And I think the other thing is that like you kind of make your own bed too, right? Where it's like Edmonton is like, okay, we'll go get blown out at home, but then go blow out another team on the road. Like if you can't win on the road in the playoffs, you need that President's Trophy, my brother. Like you need to get that, right? So I think that's the other part of it too, is that they haven't proven themselves in the longevity of a deep run or several runs, like the way that someone like Dallas has, right? Like who's, won quite a few rounds over the last couple of years, but like, I don't know, like they definitely still need that home ice advantage. They definitely still need that security a little bit higher up there. So it's a conversation with no end goal or end point. But yeah, absolutely. And I will say, I see this coming here. Top team in the league carried by Hellebuyck and a hot power play all year. Those were definitely two of the biggest reasons why they were a great team. But they were also from January 1st till the end of the season, which is like, I don't know, the time that the Winnipeg Jets collapse every single year. They were top 5 in expected goals, shot attempts, everything at 5-on-5. They were a top 5 5-on-5 team in the NHL. So I'm not going to sit here and say that, oh, Hellebuyck and power play didn't have the biggest impact on them winning the President's Trophy. But let's not go around saying the Jets weren't actually a good hockey team. Like, let's not do that. Let's not rewrite what happened this season, because in the second half of the year, they actually got better, and they actually beat Washington twice, and they actually beat Dallas twice, and then went into the playoffs and overcame the hump. And yes, this loss stings, and they didn't really accomplish what they wanted to. No one wanted the Winnipeg Jets to lose in 6 in round 2, but I liked what I saw from this Winnipeg Jets group this year, and it'll be interesting to see. Let's move into the offseason now, Lyss. And you know what? This is a good time to get the burning questions going. Let's do an mini offseason preview. We want to do a full episode of offseason preview coming up. So obviously this episode we spent talking about the series and the playoffs and the season as a whole. But let's open up the chat room
to you, where you drop your one burning question below. And if it's anything Winnipeg Jets related, we will answer it rapid fire off these questions. And if it has an off-season kind of tone to it, great. If not, we'll still try and get to it. There were a lot of questions last weekend and every single weekend. So we usually can't get to every single one, but we try to get to as many as we can. And like I said, while you're down there, make sure you hit the like button. Lets YouTube know we're putting out some great content and that you're supporting Winnipeg Sports Talk, which we appreciate very, very much. So drop your one burning questions in the chat below. Lyss, my one burning question to you is, what is the most fascinating offseason storyline, in your opinion, that you will be monitoring over the next couple of months here?
I'm going to frame this kind of cheekily. I'm going to say $10 million worth of cap space, in the sense of, I wanted to say Nikolai Ehlers, but it's the Nikolai Ehlers and adjacent storylines, where Nikolai Ehlers, pending UFA, see what happens. If that player leaves, that is a gaping hole, but a gaping opportunity. They can afford to keep Nikolai Ehlers in some capacity, right? And so that money needs to be used somewhere else. So it'll be really interesting to see. Winnipeg Jets have never made a big free agency signing on July 1st, because I'm not going to get too little bro about this, but it's a different situation for sure. But they're going to have money this year. So it's going to be really, really interesting. I would not be surprised if come September or October, there's a new high impact player on this team, whether it's a right shot defenseman, whether it's a top six winger, like a new player on this team that is not a depth draft pick or a guy who already exists in the lineup. That or Nikolai Ehlers sticks around. Like, I think there has to be a replacement for that. You're not going to replace that from within. So I think I'm going to go with that sort of storyline. What's yours?
Mine is Nikolai Ehlers. And okay, so you kind of touched on Nikolai Ehlers there, but it's all kind of connected. Do the Winnipeg Jets use their first round pick? That is my number one storyline that I'm watching for. I sat there on trade deadline day on Winnipeg Sports Talk, shocked that they still had it. If Nikolai Ehlers walks in free agency and they make that pick, I'll be even more shocked that they kept it, because like you said, this core isn't getting any younger and you need an impact player in your top six. And that first round pick is your easiest ticket to do so. So if they end up, if Nikolai Ehlers walks and they end up using that pick, I will be very shocked. So that's the number one thing that I am watching for as we head into the offseason. Let's get into one burning question. Lots of garbage time wins. Yeah, because Dallas, 2 points back from the Central Division, was mailing it in with a week to go into the playoffs. Absolutely. If the Jet, this is a great question. And honestly, the biggest concern, if Nikolai Ehlers walks, if the Jets don't re-sign Ehlers, how do they replace that speed and production from Choices TK? Great question. And honestly, one of the biggest concerns for me going into this offseason list. Yeah,
I mean, you don't replace that production per, like the
output. Speed element, though, I think is bigger, because the Jets at their worst look slow. They're a slow team at their worst, right?
Yeah, and we have seen that, there are some guys in this team that, like playing with pace in the NHL is just like a massive, massive asset for guys. And so I think replacing, like, it's going to be very, very difficult. Nikolai Ehlers is one of one as a player. I say that with full confidence. He's not the best player in the NHL, but he's definitely one of one. Like, in terms of what the production of that player is, what that player is able to do given the opportunities he's been given. No power play one up until this year. Less 5-on-5 minutes than Mason Appleton. I know everyone's talking about that. It's worth talking about, right? Like, you're not going to find that caliber of player. Those caliber types of players make north of $8 million. They do, straight up. Yep. So it's going to be very, very interesting. I have no answer for you. I need to do a deeper dig into not just the free agency market, but like guys who are, maybe have a couple years left on their deals that could be traded for. Use that first. You never know. I think it'll be really interesting to see. I don't think it's out of the question that they re-sign him. I think it is still a possibility. I really do. Sure. I think some people have written off that possibility, and I understand why, but I haven't. So yeah, I don't have a good answer for that.
No, I think that was a good answer. And there's a few other comments here. Tikona Pauly saying Ehlers is going to Chi-Town. Ben Howard saying, where does 27 sign? Again, I won't rule out Winnipeg quite yet. I know a lot of people have, and for good reason. because this is the first year he's been on the top power play. And despite that, he's still like 9th in 5-on-5 minutes for the Winnipeg Jets. You know, like he's still not being played as a top line player. And I'm sure he wants that. I could just see a bad team like Chicago throwing him a bag of, a lot of money that the Winnipeg Jets are uncomfortable with paying to support a Macklin Celebrini on San Jose or a Connor Bedard on Chicago. Give them a speedster offensive type player. No, you don't see it?
My thing, though, is I genuinely think that Nikolai Ehlers wants to win a Stanley Cup. I think that, and that's why I'm a little bit stuck on the possibility of Winnipeg or whatever and stuff like that, where it's like, okay, he's showing that maybe there is some playoff performer ability and all these different sorts of things. This is a guy who, when he's on the ice and someone tackles one of his teammates, is the first one to jump in the pile, right? Like we talk about, like Nikolai Ehlers is a team guy. He's a competitor. He's all these different things. I think Nikolai Ehlers wants to win a Stanley Cup more than he wants a 7-figure bag, or an 8-figure bag. Like I really do. Like I think that there is like a potential for him, and whether it's with Winnipeg or somewhere else, like I would be surprised to see him sign a 7-year deal with the Chicago Blackhawks. Like that is what I will say.
Sure.
Utah Hockey Club or something like that, maybe something different, but like someone who has a window coming up. And Chicago, I'm pretty down on, if that's not clear. I don't think that they're going to have a window in the next 3 years. Whereas someone like Utah, I think, has potential to make some strides, but like some of these fringe teams that need cap floor and all these sorts of things, I don't see it as a fit. But also, it's a guy who's played his whole career in Winnipeg. We've never really talked about where he signs. It's really funny, though. Anytime he gets brought up, everyone's like, sorry, guys, he's a Senator. Sorry, guys, he's a New York Islander. Sorry, guys, he's a Carolina Hurricane. It's like, oh, God, okay.
I can see the Hurricanes just because they've been interested in him forever.
He's such a hurricane. He's such
a hurricane. Yeah. So just walk in over the blue line and blast a slap shot. Like that's Hurricanes hockey.
Yeah.
Right
if they could make it work for him, I think that would be a neat fit. So maybe that's a better answer to the question.
By the way, Lyss, that Utah Hockey Club now has a name.
Sorry, my bad.
Come on. We got to get with the times here. No, the Utah Mammoth. Nikolai Ehlers' future place of employment. No, I'm kidding. I could see it. I agree with you, though, that you make a good point that I think a team that's like on the cusp looking to take the next step into the playoffs is more likely to sign, or Ehlers is more likely to sign with them, a team that's actually going to be or projected to be competitive, than a Chicago where he might just not be on a playoff team forever.
Go and
right?
Get some cardio in.
Dart Skater here asks, are they going to attempt to re-sign Tanev or keep that slot open for a young gun? I think it'll be the second part of that. I think they'll keep it open for a Chibrikov or a Parker Ford or some other bottom six style of young player that is on a cheap contract that can come in and give the same amount of production. And that amount of production wasn't even like Brandon Tanev scored one goal for the Winnipeg Jets. So I don't think
it's your second time bringing that up. I think that's correct.
Yeah. So I think they keep that slot open. Any I
don't see
objection?
Him sticking around. No.
Yeah. Here's Kenny's water bottle with the question everyone wants to know. Hassan Ramos show doesn't end after the Jet season, and so will Sunday Live continue weekly? We'll see, but we are going to continue through this summer here, through the there is still hockey on. We'll talk about the hockey games happening. We'll talk about the Winnipeg Jets offseason. We're going to do a big offseason preview. Once we get deeper into the summer, weekly gets dicey, but I will say for now, expect it weekly because we want to keep talking here about the Winnipeg Jets and this offseason, which is going to be a very fascinating one. Lyss, you brought it up. A lot of cap space, and hey, the second that Dylan Sandberg signs his long-term deal, I can't wait for WST Sunday Live. I'm going to bring all the stats. It's going to be,
I can promise you folks that whatever's going on this offseason, whatever day of the week that Dylan Sandberg signs, the following Sunday, there will be a WST Sunday Live. Connor's going to be sipping on his own pina colada on vacation, or he's going to have his WST koozie on his morning beer on a camping trip. And he's like, no, guys, Sunday Live.
Yeah, 9 a.m. Yeah, to celebrate the signing of Dylan Sandberg.
Someone in the chat someone said Sandberg isn't signing long-term. Of all of the players in this team that have contracts coming up this offseason, I think he's the one that I'm most comfortable will. That is a player that will sign a long-term contract with the Winnipeg Jets. I am quite certain of it.
Well, I was going to use this running man question comment as a question. He says Sandberg and Velarde are RFA signings. They're restricted free agents, so they can't negotiate with anyone else unless they sign an offer sheet. What do you think, Lyss, if you had to do a gut call, I think I'd say Sandberg signs long-term, Velarde bridges at maybe 1 to 2 years. I believe Velarde has 2 years left at team control as an RFA. What's your kind of gut sense on how long those two players sign for?
I think that that's a pretty valid choice. I think, yeah. Gabe Velarde signing a long-term deal right now just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I think we would start having similar conversations to what we had about Cole Perfetti last year, where it's like,
Sure.
could it work out for the team? Could it work out for the player? Whatever. Like, I think a Cole Perfetti bridge ultimately did make a bit of sense, and I think a Gabe Velarde bridge also makes sense. This is a player we've never seen play long seasons of NHL hockey. This is a guy who is streaky and all these different things, but the ceiling of what this player can accomplish is just like unbelievable. But like, you can't always bank on ceiling, especially in a hard cap environment where you can't really afford to pay guys these crazy contracts that they're not going to produce up to their bar. So I'm also going to go with a Sandberg long term and a Velarde bridge. I think that makes about sense. But if Velarde does sign a long-term deal, I think it's going to be the sort of thing that, like, when you're talking about like, oh, will they bridge or will they sign long-term? I feel like when they sign long-term, it's either like, oh my gosh, this player like got a steal of a deal and this team is stupid,
right?
Or the team is got a steal of the deal and the player is stupid. I think if Velarde signs long-term, it's going to fall in the camp of people being like, Gabe Velarde, you idiot. Like, I think it's going to be a lower AAV one, because I think, I don't know, I could see some potential there of him wanting a little bit of stability and a little bit of like longer term, like he's aware of his own health, like whatever. Like, I think that I wouldn't be surprised if we saw him sign for less than he'd end up being worth in year 3 or 4 of that deal, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yep. I'm with you on that. I will say that. Well, here, let me see if there's any other questions here. I scrolled down to keep up with the chat and what's going on right now. But there were a lot of questions earlier on as I scroll back up. How many times has Chevy not spent to the cap? Interesting point. They do typically spend to the cap. They do have a lot of cap space. So I could see them not spending to the cap because, you know, if like a Nikolai Ehlers walks, for example, it's really tough to just fill that elsewhere cap wise, unless you're trading that first round pick. Like I said, does Brandon Tanev join his brother on the Toronto Maple Leafs? That's an interesting one.
I could see it.
Could definitely see it. Okay, well, that's going to do it. Let's get into some more offseason discussion, but that was one burning question. Thank you everyone for dropping your questions down below. We really appreciate it. And like I said, make sure you hit the like button as well. Let's YouTube know we're putting out some great content. And Lyss, anything else you want to say as we head into the summer? I know someone was asking if we're going to be doing shows from the dock. Yeah, here, New Norway Rick. Please tell me there will be episodes from the dock. I can confirm that I'll be doing a show or two or many camping this summer because I go camping quite a bit, me and my family. And that'll be, I've done that before and I'll do it again. Just tethered to my phone with the personal hotspot, pray that the mosquitoes don't eat me, and do the show at 9 a.m. from the campsite. So that will be happening at some point. Lyss, are you going to have any fun locations for WST Sunday Live?
No. I don't go anywhere. I'm just I work. I don't have the flexibility of working from a dock, unfortunately. So no, I think my summer is gonna be pretty chill. I think that I will be pretty locked in on the Jets regardless of where I am. I have a couple of different couple weddings I have to go to in different provinces and different countries this year. So I think we'll be out of town every now and then, sending that out of office email. But the tweet notifications for Winnipeg Jets PR are never shut off. Don't even get it twisted. So I think I will be there no matter what when there's big Winnipeg Jets news. When Nikolai Ehlers signs his 8-year deal with the Winnipeg Jets next week,
wow,
I will be. No, I think the off season, I'm already dreading how long it's going to feel. People always like, oh, it goes
shorter than
so
last
fast.
year.
Yeah, shorter than last year. People always say that, you know, it's goes by so quickly and whatnot. It never does for me. I'm always just like itching to get back to hockey. I love June, July, like NHL awards, draft, depth camp, free agency. Like I do love that stretch. August can get a little bit long, but if there's Jets news to talk about, we will be talking about it. So
absolutely, 100% agree. We will be here no matter what for Dylan Sandberg's 8-year extension. And I will say, I just want to say on the way out that this show this season has been so much fun. I want to thank everyone for joining throughout the year. We started it in training camp, very rushed, very on a whim, kind of figuring things out in terms of like how we would all be on air. It's been an absolute blast. Everyone, joining here on Sundays at 9 a.m. And we really appreciate your support. And I will just say, me personally, covering this team this year has been an absolute pleasure. It's been a blast covering a President's Trophy winning team in a Canadian market, being in the lineup for the Game 7 Manitoba Miracle, being in the press box for that Game 7 Manitoba Miracle against the St. Louis Blues. Some of the best moments of my career that just started that I'll never forget. So I just want to thank everyone for everyone's support this year, watching this show. If you read any of my illegal curve articles throughout the year, I appreciate that as well. And hey, like Lyss said, like I said, we're going to keep this thing rolling through the offseason with offseason content, but just wanted to take a moment to thank everyone for the support this season. Lyss, do you have anything else to say?
I mean, echo all of it 100%. Like this has been easily the most fun hockey season I've ever had. Like from all these things that you mentioned, like, getting to interact with all these folks. And I think we are really grateful for Huss and Remo for this particular platform to get to do this show. Obviously we get to come on here and clearly say whatever we want. There's lots of control to talk about whatever we feel like, but we really do get to tap into the amazing network that they've created, which is this group of Winnipeg Jets fans that is just so supportive and so kind. And like, there's over 200 of you watching on a Sunday morning, the day after your hockey team just broke your heart. Like how indicative of that is that of what kind of community the Winnipeg Jets fans have here. So we're so thankful for all of you. We're so thankful for all the support that we've gotten over the year. It's been just a really cool year for both Connor and myself and for Jacob. Just there's been so much growth that we've seen from this show. And, it's so nice to get to meet so many of these folks because a lot of you are local, right? And you'll, come up to us, whether we're at the grocery store or at the Jets games and say, thank you so much for your show on Sundays. I love tuning in, and it's surreal every time because we have so much fun doing this. And I've always said to Connor and Jacob, I would do this for 0 viewers every single day if I had to, because I just love talking to these guys so much. And I'm just so grateful for kind of everyone for every role they play in making this happen for sure.
Yeah, I have to agree with you that this was probably the most fun I've had just watching hockey this year. Like even Four Nations.
It was a great season for hockey across the board. 100%, 100%.
Ovechkin broke the goal record. Like there was so much this year. If you sat down on your couch and watched hockey, you more often than not went home pretty happy or turned off the TV pretty happy with what you were just watching. So I definitely want to thank everyone for the support this season. We are going to keep it rolling through the off season here. Thank you everyone for tuning in all season long, all the way from training camp to today. This season absolutely flew by. It was an absolute blast. But until next Sunday, where we'll be doing a full off-season preview, we'll maybe talk about the start of the third round for each of those series. Leafs Panthers today. I know everyone in the chat room's cheering for the Panthers. We'll see how that goes, but we'll be back next Sunday, full off-season preview for the Winnipeg Jets. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and we will see you next Sunday. Have a great week, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the hockey games. There's no Winnipeg Jets hockey, but there is still some high-level hockey being played. So enjoy it, and we'll see you next Sunday. See ya.